Yeah, so you're like little bit of okay. I'm I conduct. I started my career basically as a like you, .NET as a .NET developer. I started my career way back 15 years back. So I was a .NET framework version 2.0 programmer. Basically into Windows Forms. Okay, so I used to work with Windows Forms. I take care of classic ASP pages. Okay, very old technologies. Classic ASP pages, web forms development, and mostly into the web programming. Okay, so MVC. Okay, I worked with MVC. Okay, and in the modern microservices and modular kind of architectures. Okay, I've been part of teams, and so training is one of my passions in conducting it, and always there is joy in learning new things. Okay, and you'll definitely gonna understand once you start going ahead. We'll learn a lot of things in this training program. And so you can find the details over here. So at the rate Kanan Sudhakaran. So okay. So I have certified for conducting Microsoft Azure developer programs. And so yeah, so Azure is one of the other aspect I like on of Microsoft, especially on the developer aspects of Azure standard. There are standard courses from Microsoft, and so I do conduct trainings on other platforms, so like Power Platforms, so where you don't write much of a code, but Power Platform has also developer track. Okay, so these are the two platforms I normally work with, and I also have worked with other integration technologies like MuleSoft, and so which is mostly in Java based projects. And it's also like low code platforms, Mule and other integration platforms. I already take conduct training for architectural certification programs. All right, so that's my introduction. And so if you can just put in your what technology stack you have worked with, and what is your expectation from this training program. So as in it's a full stack training program, and so we'll be discussing on the different aspects of this. So your training program is basically divided into you can see that. Okay, so it's well structured. So it's given into 5 parts. Okay, so we'll be working on each part. Okay, sometimes we'll be clubbing up some of the things. Some mostly when we'll start with HTML and CSS. Then we go into the JavaScript. Then we will go into the we'll deep dive into a .NET development. Okay, and so this is going to be fun. .NET development is going to be fun. Okay, and obviously JavaScript is another programming language will be fun to work with. Okay, and so we will be building a project at the last. Okay, and we will be doing a project. So I'll give you an introduction to all these things. Okay, so before that, if you can just you know put in your experience, exposure working in if any of these technologies which you have worked with, or what is your expectation from this particular training program, because this is actually a 60 you can say 60 sessions we have, right? So we have 2 hour sessions. Okay, right? So ideally we have okay, so this is our plan. So our agenda is like this, right? Okay, so we have 60 of altogether we have 60 sessions, right? Okay, and in the 60 sessions we are going to have 2 hour sessions, right? So we're going to have a 2 hour session. And so this is going to be a 2 hour session, and so we initial phases we'll have from 3 to 5. Okay, so I think you may have got invitation. 3 to 5 is going to be our initial schedule. Then we'll move it into on the morning schedule. Okay. So and I want to explain you on this different part of this, like how we'll be going ahead and doing this particular training program, right? Okay. So I would like to know like your experience, have you worked with something like these things of web programming, okay? Or even if you could just put it in the chat, it is fine. Or if you want to speak again, then that's again more than welcome, because we have a small crowd. So if you want to speak, then it's again fine. Okay, up to you. Okay. Otherwise, if it's disturbing on our office or etc., so then please do put it in the chat. Okay, so completely fine. You can just like put your views. What is your expectation from this training program? And you can just put in your experience with what technologies you work with. Ye- Yeah, yes, my Panda. Okay. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. Cool. So this is structured like that, Markanda. Nothing to worry. So I'll just take you through further. Okay. Great. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So
Hi, Kanan.
yeah. Yes, Sachin.
My name is Sachin Hulavale.
Uh,
I have a total 12 years experience in on actually CCM tool like
okay.
Coordinate Inspire.
Oh, coordinate measuring instrument. Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So
and
there you use C++,
uh,
right? You use C C
yes,
C.
yes, yes.
Okay. Great. Great.
Backend
Okay.
C sharp language is a little bit using in that,
Okay.
so I know about it a little bit.
Okay. Oh, great, great. That's.
Uh,
See, I was actually, we had some requirement, and on this, this is actually it's a little rare, right? It's a rare technology which you're working with, right?
right,
Okay.
right.
So we had some requirement. Then I was, wondering like, okay, that's good. Good to know that. Okay, great.
Yeah, that's it Kanan, from my
Yeah.
side.
So web programming, you're new to web, right? Okay, web programming, you're new. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Hi Kannan, this is Minu.
Hi,
Uh,
Meena. Okay.
actually, actually,
Uh,
I'm part of ARC projects which is using.
is visible to you. And now let's just begin our discussion. Okay. Fine. So let's just think like this. Okay. So once we do a full stack development, okay. So what are the things which are involved in full stack development, right? Okay. Yes, Markanda has a question.
Yes, Kanna. Just I want to
No. Okay.
know.
So if
So
your hand is,
sometimes
you can by mistake if you pressed, can you
I
just?
Kanna, can you hear me?
Yes, ma. Yes, yes, Markanda.
Yeah. So my doubt is just suppose one or two sections if I miss means. So every section we are sharing after this recording, Kanna, or what's the plan?
Okay, okay. I want to. Okay, that's yes, yes, yes. Thanks, Markanda. See, once you mark your attendance, I've just shared you one link to mark your attendance. Or otherwise, I have already marked few of them. Okay, let me just check. No, you will be getting access to the student portal. From the student portal, you can watch the recordings. Okay, I will show you how to access the student portal. Just a good question. Let me just clarify that. I hope everybody is there. Okay, I didn't miss anyone. Akhilesh has joined. Okay, Markanda joined. Okay, Jitendra has joined, right? Okay, so is it from a different ID? 8957 is Jitendra. Okay, so Premnada has also joined, right? Premnada has also joined. Okay, great. So Jaya, okay, so is Jaya has joined? Okay, Jaya, okay. Did I miss Jaya?
Yeah, I am here.
Okay, yes, yes. Fine. So I think I'll mark everybody then. Fine. Cool. See, now once your attendance marked, so you're registered in the system in which ways, you can just log in with your official email ID to this, link. Let me just share you the link with you. Okay. MyKanic. So this is the link. You can just log into MyKanic with your official email ID. And the password will be the assignment ID. So you can change it afterwards. Okay. So let me just see. Or you can click on forget password or whatever. As of now, this will be the first time. One time password will be the assignment ID. So I'll put that, password as well. So once you log in, then you can change your password. So there you will have a session. Once a recording section will be there where you will be able to see the recordings of the training. So other updates will be coming in the student portal itself. Just do let me know if you can access it. If you're able to access, just put it in the chat. Able to access. Okay, so just do let me know. Okay, so there is the link given, mycanic.com. Just put in your email, official email ID, go to login and put in your official email ID, and then the password, one-time password is your assignment. The assignment ID I've already shared you. Okay, so this is our assignment ID. So I've shared you that ID. You can just log in with that ID. So is the student portal accessible? Just do let me know.
Yes, Kannan. You can
Okay.
access.
Okay, thanks. Great. Great. So there you will get the recording and your attendance. So you see there will be a check mark against that today's date. So that basically means you have been already marked. Okay, attendance is marked. Fine. So you also can see the schedule, like which day is the next training, etc. In that. Just have a look at it. Okay. So as of now, let me show you the schedule as such. Okay. So this is going to be a big schedule for us. So this is going to be 2 hours daily, right? So we have a 2 hours training, and so this is our schedule. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thanks for confirming whether you are able to log in. Fine. So we're going to have 25, 26, 28 it is. So 27 you don't have a training, and 29th for this week. Okay. So we'll just see this week you have 4 sessions, and remember to join on post lunch, like around 3 o'clock you can join. And then I see, since there are other schedules, okay, was clashing, so that's why we just kept it this way. But from from I think from the December, can see from December. Yeah, so December 17th, right? So from December 17th, it's going to be like only one schedule we have. Okay, solely on a morning schedule. So we'll just share morning till it goes like till Feb. So all the recordings will be available in case you missed any session. So not a problem. You can just watch the recordings, or you can have any doubts. You can clarify in the coming session. Right. So it's going to be a 60 like sessions, right? It's going to be a long session for us. So we'll be interacting every day mostly, Monday to Friday. Right. So welcome everyone. So let's now start the session. I hopefully you have the prerequisites. You have the student portal. You mark the attendance. Student portal you have access, and there is one thing uh, okay. So there's one lab access is there. Lab is been getting ready. So you're just I'll tell you how to access the labs later on. I think the data center team is working on that your labs. And so today, anyway, we just kind of introduce you to this, okay, the training program. And anyway, we'll have some like demonstrations like hosting and other things. Okay, so in case if you want to try it out in your machine, I think it would also work. Okay, I suppose. Okay, otherwise I would need a lab machine. So lab machines mostly will get ready today itself. Okay, I will also get you how to access the lab machines. Fine. Okay, so now let's okay, so let's begin our session. So basically, okay, so if you look at our training program, so we divide this into like four it's divided into different parts. So let me first explain you like in a web programming, right? So what are the things we do, and how this stack will fall in place, right? So let me explain you that part. See, normally what happens is that when we are doing web developers, right? We are going to be web developers. Okay, so in case you are new to programming, that's completely fine. Okay, so this has been structured by your, especially your department heads, basically considering all these things. Okay, so let's learn like accordingly that. So so web developer, right? That's your designation you're going to get, right? Web developer. So when you are a web developer, so first thing we need to understand is like being a web developer, like what technologies I want to learn, or how is the web development, things work, like how things works in, especially in web development. Okay, let's understand that first. So now if you have a good understanding of that, okay, you can easily relate, why this is structured like this. Okay, so let's understand that. So first, normally what happens is like, that in web, okay, right, you have a web server, okay, right, you have a browser. Okay, so you say browser, okay, as a user agent. Okay, when I say user agent, not necessarily it should be a browser. It could be like, the, or you can say a client. Okay, so it could be, okay. Um, okay, as of now, okay, we just simply say this is our client. Okay, so client, okay, server architecture. The browser, I call it as a user agent. I'll come to that term. Okay, user agent, because user is what you are. Okay, you and me are like surfing the web. So we are a user. right? Okay, somebody who comes in between, okay, your data, okay, just like I was just marking your attendance. So I was using this browser. So the browser, okay, is a user agent. Okay, so it sits in between me and my ERP system. Okay, my system where your attendance and all these things are marked. So a client, okay, server architecture. We are first looking at a client server architecture. So a user using a user agent or user agent, or you can simply put a browser. You just think as of now, for simplicity, let's keep it a browser only. Okay, a browser. Okay, so we are using a browser to interact to the server. Simple client server architecture. So the server, okay, in a web application, so there will be a server. So the server is physical. Obviously, there will be a physical machine, but this physical machine will be running a software. Okay, so that software will be actually hosting your web application and or might be web pages. So let's think that this is a server, right? So this is going to be a server. The server will have a software which is actually running 24/7, listening to your user input, okay, or listening to user. So you can think like this is our web server, okay, and a web server is actually a software. Okay, we're going to we'll see this in action. Okay, don't worry, all these things we'll see in action. Okay, web server. Okay, a web server is going to be taking what? Okay, a request from a client application. Okay, client application is currently, you can just think that, okay, the browser, from the browser, okay, or a user agent is trying to make a request. Okay, so in the web server, what do you do in the web server? Well, a web server, typically we are going to use a web server known as IIS. Okay, Microsoft IIS server. So it could be Apache server, or it could be Nginx, or some kind of web server. It could be anything. Okay, any web server. So what is the purpose of a server? A server is somebody who actually listens. Okay, so they are actually listeners. They listens to client. They listens. So they're going to be running all the time. Okay, they runs on a port. Okay, so they will be listening on a port number. Okay, or you can think like they are listening for client request. And what is the web server will be holding? A web server is basically going to hold, okay, nothing but web pages. Just currently think like it holds web pages. Okay, so it is going to hold web pages. Right, it's going to hold web pages. Now, whenever you make a request, okay. So right now, let's take a case of a static website. Okay, static website means there is no database connection. Okay, all the contents are static. It's not a web application. We'll come to web application also in a minute. Okay. So you're making a web request, or you're making a request for a particular resource, right? So I'm saying, okay, I want a login page. I want to log into the system. So what are you doing? So you're making an HTTP request. So you're making a HTTP request from your browser or your user agent. Okay. So you make a HTTP request. So the HTTP request goes to the server. Right. Okay. So this is actually known as an HTTP request. So you make a request. Okay. And so if the request, okay, so for example, I request for a /login, right? So I'm requesting for a login page, login, right? Okay. So that login, when I say /login, so there would be some page. Just think that there is some page, okay, which is there. And that page contains what some form which have a text box, okay, to enter my username and password. And it could be having a button to submit that form. So when I say /login, think that there is some page which is going to be there, and that page is going to be returned to me back. Okay, so it's going to be returned me back. So now what we are seeing is an HTTP request. Okay, a request and a response. So this is your request. You're making a HTTP request. Okay, and you're getting an HTTP response. Okay, response. Now, once you get a request and a response, what do you have it? Okay, so what you have is a page, right? So you're getting a form, and this form will contain what a username, okay, where you can fill in the username, right? Okay, and you'll have a form to fill the password. just like you're seen in your student portal, right? Okay, you just fill the username and you put the password in the student portal, and then what you have a button to submit. So when you submit it, right, okay, now everything you are right now doing, right, so you are typing something, okay, so you are, you're entering the text. So after that only you will be submitting. So whenever you're typing anything, right, over here, so what if if there is a possibility that by mistake I didn't type the password, so will I able to submit it? Well, you shouldn't be able to submit it if you didn't fill these fields, right? So it should not again take you to the server again, because if you again go to the server without you filling, that actually is a bad design, because like, unless, why should I again go to the server without I even filling anything, isn't it? It doesn't make sense. So what happens is you have to validate the user fields. Okay, you can do it in the client side itself. So the client side means without you going to the server, you can do some kind of validations on here itself. So you can validate, okay, validate your user inputs here, and not the business, okay, user, right? So you can just validate if this field is not containing alphanumeric characters, or this field is empty. Okay, if this is a number field, if it's properly typed, etc. So you can do this kind of validation in the client itself. Okay, so whenever you are building a web application, okay, or web application or a website, okay, so, or web application, you just think that, so you make a request, you get a response. Once the response comes, only you get something here. So this is actually the view. Okay, so you can say this is the view of the application, right? The presentation of the application, the view of the application. On the view, we can actually do some kind of what, okay, validation. So we can just do a bit of validations on the view itself in the HTML itself. Right. So how do you do validation on the HTML side itself? So this is why we need to have, we normally do this via JavaScript. So we have something like a JavaScript, okay? So which we will be using. So JavaScript, or we will be using, jQuery, okay? Or you will use some client side, scripting, JavaScript, jQuery, etc. to check, if this user has filled these fields, okay? Or, if he doesn't fill in, it's like taking this data again, going to the server is actually a round trip. It's unnecessary. You go to the server, then server will do a validation, then again I'll get a response. So rather than, you can reduce the round trip, the trip to the server, by you just simply doing some validations here itself, okay, so that you can actually improve like the user experience, okay, as well as, okay, you have a better okay, yes, you have a better experience for the user as well. Okay, so now, okay, so where does JavaScript actually run? Okay, basically, if you're looking at here, so we are using JavaScript here to run, okay, on your, on the browser itself. So the user agent, or the user agent currently is the browser. So we can run your JavaScript on the browser. So how does I can run the JavaScript on the browser? We'll come to that in some time. And also, you see that the browser is also capable of rendering these beautiful views. Okay, so the browser internally going to have, okay, engine to execute that validation code. So that means it will have a JavaScript engine, okay, and also it will have an engine to render this to make it beautiful, beautify this. Okay, so two things it will have. Your browsers are equipped to having a JavaScript engine. Okay, the JavaScript engine can validate, okay, or it can execute the JavaScript. And why do you need JavaScript? Basically, you just think that I want to do some validations right away in the browser before I go to the server. So this is one of the main use case where JavaScript was initially introduced. Okay, and now also the browser, if you see the browser or the user agent, which currently we're going to use, also have beautification. You see, it can beautifully structure these things. Okay, how does this happen? Well, this happens through the rendering engine. Okay, so you have the JavaScript engine to validate, okay, your like user inputs, and you have a rendering engine within the browsers which can beautifully display your content for you. Now once your data is being properly like you have properly typed in your username and password. Okay, just think the student portal, you typed in the username and password. Now you click on the submit button. Okay, so what do you think will happen? Well, when you submit it, definitely, so this data has to go to the server, because now it cannot be static contents, because the username and password might be kept somewhere else. Okay, it could be kept in a database. So for that, okay, so you will have, okay, might be a separate machine, okay, based on the architecture your team is using. So they may have a separate machine to, okay, do that particular task. So let's say we have a separate machine only altogether. So the company has set up, if you have a, okay, the setup in your company's on-premise, okay, you call it as on-premise setup. And if it is on a separate, a network of Microsoft or, AWS, use a cloud. So now let's say we are setting up a separate machine. Okay, so you physical machine, you call it as a server. Okay, so this machine will also have a software installed, just like IIS server was installed. So you will be installing a software, and that is your okay, your database server. So you will be installing a separate software. Okay, and this is your database server. So the database server, okay, is what you're going to have there. And does the database server also listens on a port and all? Yes, they are servers. So this is a DB server. So the DB server will also be listening, just like you see this person was listening. The similar way, okay, who is listening? The DB server also listens. Okay, he is listening. Why? Because he has to, he will be listening so that database connections can be opened, and then data can be returned, and then the connections can be closed. So similar way, we have a database server, just like we have a web server, you'll have a database server. And what is the purpose of the database server? Well, the database server is going to be containing, okay, or storing, if it is like, it depends if you are using a relational database or you are using non-relational database. Currently we will be touching relational databases. So that basically means your data are stored in tables, and the tables will be related to some other table. So you'll have parent child tables, you'll have one or more tables, and these tables are related. So you normally call these as relational databases. Okay, so you'll have relation between parent and child, or you have tables and relationship. So the data is actually stored in a database, okay, and the database is made up of what? Tables. Okay, so might be you have a customer, then you have orders, okay, line items. So more, for example, you have student will have the corresponding batches, and the batches okay, will have faculty, like that. So there will be different like tables, and their relationships will be there. So this is the typical database, okay, and this database is made up of basically relational data. So you have relational database contains tables. Now there will be definitely a user table, okay, or a student table, which will have your login and credentials kept. Now the moment you say I fill this, right? So I fill this particular form, correct? I fill this form, and I'm trying to do a submit operation. So what do you think will happen? So this definitely going to take me again to the server. Now, to do this processing, see, now this is going to be a little complicated processing, because I have to connect to the database. I need to open a connection to the database. And then I have to check if this user ID password is there. So there has to be a communication from your web application, right? Okay, which you are hosted, this web application which you are hosted. And that web application, some of the page which we are submitting, that page will have to have some code which goes to the database. So this kind of code is actually known as a dynamic code. Okay, it's not static. This should be a page which is dynamic, and that page should have a connection to the database. It should know the database connection string. Okay, it should know how to execute a command. So it should know how to retrieve the data. It should know how to validate that data. Okay, and assuming so the connections to the database, you get the data back from the database server, right? Okay, so database server has now returned you the data. Once the data is returned from the database, what you have to do is you have to populate, okay, you have to create a page. This page is going to be dynamic in nature. Why? Because the database connection etc cannot execute just like that. So you need to have server side programming languages. Okay, so now we've been discussing on the client side programming language like JavaScript, jQuery. Okay, so now we are saying server side programming language we need. Why? Because server-side programming languages are dynamic page. Will generate you dynamic pages, because there is no specific user. It could be any user, right? It could be Akhilesh. It could be Premnath. Okay, it could be any user. Which currently that this page, which is going to be rendered, could be dynamic in nature. So they should connect to the database, and then that particular users, correct? That particular user's details should come. It should be dynamic. It cannot be static. So we need server-side programming language, so that every user will or every student which we are having, right? So all the students, the data will be dynamically fetched, and then based on his details, this will be populated, and so this is going to be their welcome screen. So the server-side programming languages, okay, well, we have server-side different server-side programming languages, like you have Java, we have we have Node.js for we have Node and Node and JavaScript. Right now we are not going in that. Okay, we are going with C sharp. So we are going to have C sharp and ASP.NET. Okay, so we're going to be using C sharp and ASP.NET, or you may be using Java and JSP pages, etc. Okay, or you may use PHP and specific scripts for that. So now these code, okay, is going to be dynamic in nature, and this code is going to why dynamic? Because they're definitely going to have your database connections and other business logic to be executed on the server. Okay, and so your web server will be capable to host static pages. Yes. Will the web server be capable to host dynamic pages? Yes. Okay. So it depends upon your web server. If you are using a web server like Windows IAS server, okay, can is a Windows on product, right? So it will definitely support all the Microsoft stacks. Okay, it will support Microsoft stack. Okay. So, but does IAS support Java? Well, IAS doesn't have support for Java, etc. So right now, what we are looking at currently, you don't have to go into that details. It's just currently think that okay, so your web server can also support executing dynamic content. Okay, dynamic content means so it will have a support for executing the .NET runtime. Okay, and it can host your .NET applications. Okay, so static contents one side, okay, and the dynamic content. So where you have other connection to or connection to databases and your business logic. Now let's say you have your application. Okay, now once this the data user is there, so what did it do? It actually dynamically generated this page. Okay, and this page is going to be returned back, right? This is going to be returned back to the browser. Does browser understand JSP page, etc.? No, browser doesn't understand it. So you have to return it back as HTML page. So that means when the response comes from the client, right? Sorry, from the server to the client. Okay, so we are looking at a client server architecture. Okay, so that means the client is your user agent or the browser. Okay, and the server is your could be a web server. It could be which will be hosting your web pages, and the web server will talk to what? Okay, database server. Okay, for executing some of your business logic and rules. Now, once the response come in, right? Okay, so what do you think you will have? Okay, well, you're going to have a welcome screen. So this is going to be a welcome screen, right? Okay. So in the welcome screen, okay, you will be as a student, you can just see in your student portal. Okay, so you will see that you will have your details. Okay, so which has been already registered from your company. Okay, and also you'll have some recordings and your attendance. Okay, so all this details of your batch details, everything will be marked here. Okay, so this is a dynamic page. So we are talking about server side technologies, okay, and we are talking about client side technologies. So what are the things in your client side? So in your client side, what we have is client side technologies are like this. So we're going to have things which execute on your client side. That's your browser side. So the things which execute on your client side are what? Okay, so obviously the CSS. Okay, so it will be for rendering part. You see, we have a rendering engine. Okay, so the rendering engine is going to be displaying things with the proper color format, etc. So that you use cascading style sheet or normally use a CSS. Okay, and we have JavaScript. Okay, and JavaScript. Okay, on the client side, we are going to use what for JavaScript and jQuery. Okay, we're going to use. And so what else? You have obviously HTML. Okay, so the HTML pages. Okay, so you're going to have HTML pages, or we will be the if you see the server side technologies like ASP.NET, like JSP servlets, PHP. So they they do is they will execute on the server, but they cannot they have to actually basically they have to return you an HTML back, right? So they have to return you HTML back. Why they should return you HTML back? Because they don't understand these pages like ASPX pages, ASP pages, JSP pages. They only know HTML. So no matter which programming language on the server side you're using, they always execute and they always return you HTML back. Okay, because why? Because your browser understands of rendering or your rendering of HTML only. So okay, so the HTML is what you have on the client side. You have CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and HTML things which are going to be executing on your client side. And on the server side, okay, so what technologies you will be using? So obviously on the server side, we will be using these technologies like we will be using technologies like ASP. Okay, so we will be learning to use C Sharp. Okay, right? So we'll be learning to use ASP.NET. Right? Okay, so we will be learning to use database programming, etc. Okay, so database programming is we are looking at SQL Server. SQL Server. Okay. So now, any question till now? Okay, any question, like confusions, doubt you have, just can ask. We want to scale this architecture a little bit more. Okay. So if you have any questions on this, you can just ask. Okay, if you're good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are using IIS server. Okay. Okay. And if when we're yeah, so no, mostly for .NET framework development, we use always what IIS server. But currently, .NET has also evolved from over the years. .NET has become .NET Core. Okay, where .NET Core, not IIS is not needed. We can host it in Nginx. Okay, we can Nginx or Apache server. We can host. Okay, so we will be learning .NET Core. Okay, yeah, so good question. See, on the clients, on the server side, what we will be learning is we will be learning, okay, .NET Core. And what is the advantage of using .NET Core? Okay, so see, .NET Core is basically, you can think like it's not only on Windows platform, it supports Windows Linux. Okay, so Windows Linux, Mac, etc. So if you're using a Mac machine and you say, okay, I want to work with Mac, okay, fine, you use Mac, and you can download Visual Studio and you can just work with the .NET Core application. That's completely fine. Okay, so that means it's cross-platform, just like Java, right? So we can create ASP.NET
And
Core
okay,
applications. Not necessarily. Yeah.
with the core .NET Core, we can implement both. It is only support static or web application also.
Yeah, both. Okay, so we can do both. Okay.
Okay, okay,
We'll okay. That means yeah, static application in the sense, yeah. So in that case, you are building everything in HTML only. That means you are building plain HTML pages only. Okay,
okay,
so we can build what if you are making static pages, that's completely fine. But then you are not leveraging the power of what .NET. Okay,
okay,
so okay, so because .NET power is more into server side coding. So if right, okay,
okay, okay, okay. Thanks,
okay,
man.
yeah, okay, all right. So normally, okay, so when you're building application. Right. Okay. Now what happens is the views are actually rendered. You see the views are rendered here. Now there is one problem. My team says, see, I have Android developers, I have iOS developers. Like, but I don't want your views. Okay. So your views are HTML. Android and iOS developers are meant to build views only. They are building their own apps. They build a view layer. So now they say, okay, I don't want to do that. Okay. Yes, Akhilesh has a question. Yes, Akhilesh.
Yeah, Karan, this client that you mentioned, the client is actually the user or the browser?
Yeah, so client is okay in client server architecture. So the client is the app. Always communication happens between two apps. Okay, one app is your browser. Okay,
Okay,
and the other app is your web server.
got it. Thank you.
Okay, fine. So now, okay, let's say we have a different use case now. Now you say, okay, fine. So technology evolved. It's not client server. Yeah, client server is good enough. I mean, it's good technology. We are obviously using client server only. But in the presentation layer, there is a few changes because now, okay, my company evolved and my company says, well, we have like my client says we want the application to be in mobile. Now, just like the student application portal which I have given you, right? Okay, so I think the student portal which you have marked the attendance. Now, okay, so now some of our customers says, okay, we want the students to use the mobile application. Okay, can you just develop it in mobile? So what change you will do in your architecture, because you build this architecture like this, you made an architecture where your web application is running on the server and you have a database different server. Okay, all is good. This application works and it can validate etc. On the server side, validation is possible through C# ASP.NET. Client side validation you can do JavaScript, jQuery, etc. Okay, this works fine. Now what is your problem?
So
The
like
problem
that,
is
like
now I have like people who uses Android and the people who use iOS. Okay, so they just are two different teams, or obviously two different users. So they just want your application. They don't want to open in the browser and then type all these things. So they want it as an app. Okay, so how will you design as an architect? Okay, how will you make change? Okay, so this is going to be your Android app, correct? Okay, and then this is going to be your iOS app. So obviously that is heterogeneous technologies now. Okay, because they are different like Java and Kotlin, etc. Right? iOS app. So it's like Java Kotlin, and Java Kotlin has nothing to do with ASP.NET. Okay, so ASP.NET is a .NET Core, like it's running on the .NET Core engine, right? We are going to use .NET Core engine. Okay, And so .NET Core libraries or something, and then this is in Swift or some other programming language. Okay, so as an architect, what will you do in this case? So how will you make obviously I cannot give my views there. Okay, I'll not give my views directly because they want apps. So in this particular use case, what will you do is, so you have to have a different architecture basically. Okay, so you say, okay, fine, all my application users, well, they use the web server and get it through the browser. But what I'll do with this, okay, so this is going to be a little different, right? It's going to be a little challenging for me to do this, right? So that's where we have to do something like this, okay? So you have to change your architecture in such a way that, okay, so you're going to building one more layer in your project. So you call this as API layer. So you're going to bring in one more server, okay? So you build one more API layer, okay? So you're going to build a, okay, separate server app, okay? So this is going to be your APIs are basically integration technology, okay? You build an API, okay? And so in this API, okay, or you call it as RESTful APIs, okay? You are going to access it across HTTP protocol. Okay, so you can just think that just as of now, you just don't want to go into much details on this. Just think that, okay, so I will build the same thing which I did, okay, but it will not stripe out the views. You see, it was striping out us. Where is the views? Okay, it was returning a view. Okay, so the views are not needed because views are presentation layer. The views are with the Android and iOS programmers. So the view layer is always with these guys. Now, what is this guys is then need? See, these guys just need to call some endpoint, okay, and that will actually execute on the server just like we did before, but it should only return me like a JSON data. It should return me some kind of JSON data, not it should only return data. Don't return views. Why? Because views are already in the Android and iOS, right? They are the presentation layer, isn't it? They are presentation layer. Now, what will you do in the API architecture or API-led architecture? In the API-led architecture, what we'll do, we'll just do all the things which we did before. Okay, so that means we have to have everything in the server side. So we'll have to have the login check, everything. Okay, we will be doing in here. So you'll have the server side, code there. So you'll have to have your server side code. Okay, so connecting to the database, all these things will be there. They connect to the database? Yes, they have to connect to the database server. So they interact with the database server. So they will do the check all these things there. Okay, so they will connect to the database server. They will get the data. Okay, they will do all these things. But only thing is they don't return HTML. There's no HTML. Okay, they don't return HTML. Why? Because the HTML is of no use here. Because these guys already have Android, iOS. They will render it. So what you are supposed to do is API is just you can think like the server side code you write, and but the server side code will be called via Android, iOS programmers, and they just send you the plain JSON data. Okay, they will be sending JSON data across, and the JSON is a standard format which is actually supported in all these technologies. Okay, they all support this JSON format. Okay, or normally JSON or XML, whatever the format needed by the client. So this is returned. Okay, and this is pure data. You see, this is not view. This is the data, and they will consume this data. They will convert it into their programming language. For example, this is Android. Let's say this is in Java. Okay, or Kotlin. Right. Okay, and then say, okay, well, this is iOS, so they will use some kind of C, Objective C or Swift or some other programming language. Now they also convert this data, and they will definitely convert this JSON into their programming language format, objects of their programming language, and then they will render it into their view. Okay, now this is much like flexible architecture. Why? Because tomorrow Android is out of market, no problem at all, because my server, okay, logic is not changing. The server side logic is not changing. Only the presentation layer I can, I can throw away, or I can ditch it. Okay, or I can scrap it anytime I want. Okay, so we segregate your views. Okay, these are your view layer or presentation layer. We can segregate our presentation layer from your business layer. Okay, from the server side. Okay, so now if you see this architecture, so what happens is, so your view is also here, right? Your view is also there. Okay, now your like business logic or your server side logic is also there. All are there. And what is the server doing? Server is doing all the heavy lifting, because server is actually generating what? HTML for you. He generates the view also. He generates the view also for you. Everything is happening mostly on the server side. This kind of architecture Okay, what happens is everything, even the views are generated from the server. Server generates you what HTML. So everything is generated on the server. Okay, and so then the client is just rendering it. That's it. The rendering engine is only the browser has the rendering engine, right? So the rendering engine is only there. They are just only rendering the data and then doing some kind of JavaScript validation. Now, if this is the architecture, okay, there is powerful JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular. So they usually runs your application just like Android app. You can create apps, okay, like experience for user without page refreshing. Okay, so you normally call these applications as Ajax based application or single page applications. So what we can do is we can leverage the power of the client side. Okay, so because now if you see this the JavaScript engine and the rendering engine is like yeah, rendering engine we are using for rendering these things. The JavaScript engine and other things we are not very much using, okay, very much. Now the architecture of the web has actually changed from the advent of mobile applications. So what they do is, as in you see that architecture completely changed. So your server side applications are not trying to generate HTML for you, because it generates only data, right? Isn't it? So it just have to only do the business logic and generate data. And whoever want, why don't they display in their own technology, isn't it? It's going to be a little flexible, or you can think like loosely coupled architecture. So where you can loosely coupling basically means you can just plug in Android, and tomorrow Android is not there. Some other operating system comes for mobile devices. You can plug that also. Okay, this is loosely coupled because your server is abstracting, okay, the presentation layer, or so the server does not have to know about the presentation layer. And if you see here, the server is knowing so many details, like he knows about so much of the data contents, okay, like the views are generated by the server. So this architecture is better than this architecture. You can say this is a little more scalable architecture. And based on this, actually the HTML, so the recent releases of HTML specification, right? Okay. So HTML, okay, so let's say HTML5 and specifications, right? So what is the idea about HTML5 specification? Okay, is basically it gives more power to the browser. Okay, so just high level, I'm just talking more power to the browser. So more power to the browser means so browser is not a thin client. Okay, so if you see this architecture, which the world of web is basically designed. So this is actually a thin client architecture. You have a thin client, okay, and you have a fat server. So this is a thin client and this is a fat server. Why? Because see the server is coupled with what the views. Okay, so it's a fat server architecture. Now can't we take the views out? Let the client only decide, because he anyway has a rendering engine. He's beautiful in rendering things. So now the JavaScript engine has also evolved from HTML5 on specification onwards. Okay, so the browser is more powerful. It can render videos. It can display things without a flash. Okay, or it doesn't want any special plugins. So the browser has more capabilities. So with more power comes what? More responsibilities, right? So why don't the browser can just take and render the whole HTML, and can't I build applications which like Android, iOS, and run it on the browser itself? And then whenever I want data, I'll just go and hit the server only that time only. So if I can do all the rendering in the client itself, so it will be a better UX, right? It will be better user experience. Okay, so your page doesn't refresh. And if you doesn't refresh the page, it's actually Ajax, asynchronous calls. You will make calls without refreshing your page. You'll learn that Ajax. Okay. So this kind of application which are built on this Ajax kind of a technique, okay, is actually not a single page apps. So what we can do is we can build SPA, single page apps. So how do you build SPA? Single page apps. So you'll build single page apps. Basically, single page application means so you are not refreshing the page only one time, okay, or the single time. The contents get downloaded, and then the pages are rendered, um, by Ajax request. So you get the feeling of like nothing is refreshing. And so for this, you have powerful frameworks like you have React, Angular. Okay, so you can use React, okay, and Angular. So when you use React and Angular, are they server-side technologies? No, they are client-side technologies. They are built basically on JavaScript. But now recent years they have removed JS only. Now you don't think people say React JS, okay? And you don't say people saying Angular JS, okay? Well, ideally, okay. So it basically means you can develop React and Angular without even JavaScript. You can use some other programming language like TypeScript, okay? And then you convert everything into JavaScript. So right now you don't want to know the details about it. You just currently think like, okay, React and Angular are running on the client, and obviously client side means they are converted. The React application, no matter you use TypeScript or anything, you have to anyway convert to JavaScript. Why? Because your browser only understands what JavaScript. So these applications are basically built on they are actually built through or they are compiled to JavaScript. Okay, or you can think like React and Angular applications you're building through JavaScript. Okay, for understanding purpose, you can think like that. And this single page application, so what is the advantage? They works like similar to this Android iOS app, okay? And you can open that in the browser. When you open that in the browser, your browser will not obviously it will make a full page request and a response once. That means so for hosting your single page application, you will be definitely need a web server. You're just going to have a web server. Okay, so you'll have a web server like this. Okay, you have a web server. So this is going to be hosting your the Angular React application. And once this page is loaded, so this is one time, right? So it's a one full request and a response happens one time. Okay, single page. That means one full request response happen. After the request and response happens, right? You can just think that next all the calls are going to your, might be going to get the fetch server side logic, etc. So they make Ajax request. So they might be, you want to do validation, okay, of if the user is already logged in. So whereas it will go, to the API. Okay, check if this user is a valid user. So any business logic you want to we want to execute, so it has to go and hit the APIs. It will hit your RESTful APIs to get the business logic. And where is your Angular React application? They can be hosted in a static website. So it's going to be it is a static page. So you can host it in S3 bucket. Okay, if you're using AWS, you can host it in S3 bucket, or you can if you're using cloud, you can store it in storage account, etc. So I'll show you all these things. Okay, so I'll show you hosting in cloud, etc. Okay, especially we'll look into Azure. So here, if you look at Angular React, what is this? They are actually static pages, right? You are building, static application. Okay, static pages. You can think like, static pages only there. Okay, so your static apps which you are building, static pages which you are built through Angular React. So you can easily host it in some, static website, and whenever business logic needed to be done, they can request to your APIs. Now this architecture is very flexible, isn't it? So I can use in different kind of client side architectures, client side applications, including single page application in React Angular, and all my server side logic resides in my API. Now what if I have a big API? So it's a bigger API, one big monolith. Okay, so it's a big monolith. Monolith means, okay, you can just think like an elephant. Okay, but so one of the problems with a bigger API, okay, so is like this. So let's say, can I take this API and convert it into smaller APIs? Okay, for example, if you are building an e-commerce application, you can see we have different, we can convert easily that into something like a catalog, okay, related things, or might be something related to shipment related things, right? So might be you have, something related to the payment related things. So if can I, based on your business use case, can I take this full API? Can I convert this into smaller APIs? What is the biggest advantage of converting this into smaller, okay, APIs and hosting it separately? Is if more requests comes to the catalog only. Catalog is like product, so everybody is just coming to Amazon. Okay, like 100 users are out of one or two only purchases, but still people will come to use Amazon, right? Or any specific e-commerce application. So the catalog part, the product catalog, if I am clubbing product catalog and the shipment and the payment, everything in a single API. Okay, so it has a little like bottleneck. So can't I make it separate? Okay, so that means you can take a bigger application and you can actually split it into smaller APIs. Okay, you can just actually split it into smaller applications or smaller APIs. And the beauty of this architecture is, right? So when you convert this into this architecture, so let's say we just take this one. Okay, so this is going to be one application which is running, right? Okay, so this going to be your, this is going to be your product catalog. Okay, you can think that this is going to be running at one place. Okay, and then another, application which is there, which is the shipment. Okay, so you're just taking it separately, and you can actually run it separately. Okay, so what is the beauty of this architecture is if more requests are coming to just the product catalog, let's say this is the product catalog, correct? Okay, product catalog. Okay, so I can, okay, I can increase the, you know, the number of instances. Okay, so the number of instances can be increased, or basically it means, so now I have only one, okay, application which is running for the product catalog. I can span one more application, okay, for on the product catalog. You can just think that, okay, something which is not a scalability. You can scale this application just separately. This only this application you can scale it. Okay, so you can scale this the number of applications, because this is more request comes in, so I can take this application and have multiple instances of this application. And so this I can keep it as such, because there is no much user interaction here. So this is one beautiful thing which you have, and this is actually not horizontal scaling. Okay, so you scale your application instances. So you could think that you have multiple, if might be some of you are coming from database background, like database instance. So if more load comes into the database, what will you do? So you will span one more instance. Okay, so why are you spanning multiple instances? Because both the instances can now serve the load. Okay, so it is just like I am an employee. Okay, if I have 100% utilization, then I cannot work more in the company. I should leave the company. So what happens is, if I have like 80 percentage utilization, okay, or I'm just fully occupied, right? So they should hire another one more employee to just reduce the load on a particular employee. They may be putting like 60 like that. Okay, otherwise employees immediately burn out. Okay, so that means they keep hiring other employees just to reduce the load on a specific employee. That's the horizontal scaling. The similar concept what you'll have is, so you'll scale this. So you have one application, okay, instance is there, but you will have one more instance of the same application. It's not an instance of the other one. This is a shipments, right? So this is a shipments instance. So you'll have like you scale your application to meet your demands, right? So shipments is a separate one and payments is separate one. They will only have one instance. Okay, they don't have multiple instances. So this kind of architecture we normally is very popular in the cloud architecture. Okay, so to build these technologies, okay, so you will be using some of the technology. You have to convert your application into something like a containerized application. So you have to convert this into containerized application, and these containerized applications are very popular. And you normally call this containerized application like microservices. Okay, so microservices means, so you have the big API which you have. Okay, so this big API, what you do, you convert into smaller APIs. And why do you convert into smaller API? Scalability. Okay, scalable. You can scale it horizontally. So that means you can create one more instances. Okay, so for catering this, okay, or you call this microservices applications are more normally containerized application. Okay, containerized apps, containerized application. For that you use technologies like Docker and all these things. Okay, Docker, Kubernetes, all these things, but we are not going into these details. But when we create a .NET Core project, remember, when we create a .NET Core project, there is there are options to containerize it. So that time I may not discuss this. So if you are clear with that, okay, we will containerize the app, and then it will say, okay, create a .NET project, and do you need a Docker file, etc. So basically that time, okay, again, might be I'll come back to this again, okay, one more time. So okay, containerizing the application basically means, okay, you are thinking about not building one single API. So you will be building many APIs. Okay, so you'll be building many APIs, and these APIs will can be scaled horizontally, and for that we will use some technologies like containerization, etc., for spanning the request, etc. So this is what I normally your in your company you may have a similar architecture. For containerizing, you normally go with cloud-based architecture, because it's we cannot put these things in our infrastructure. It can be very difficult to manage all these things. So, but if you go with the cloud architecture, these things like microservices architecture becomes much easy, for putting it. And if you put your APIs and you put your web server, all these things on your own, like companies like networks, so you will say this is on-premise. Okay, or if you move it into the cloud, that's or if you move use the if you rent the resources of Microsoft or AWS, then you say you are a tenant. And since you are renting the resources of the tenant, or sorry, you are renting the resources of the cloud provider. So you can also move this like this database server, the web server, and you can move this the entire APIs. You can convert this into this kind of architecture, and then you can move into the cloud as well. So where do you move into the cloud? You move into the cloud because of this scalability. You can scale immediately based on peak loads. Okay, so just say immediately there are a lot of requests coming to your server, so immediately that particular service can have one more instance, more request, one more instance, more instance, one more instance. You can have more instances. This is very much feasible when you go into the cloud architecture, right? So this is normally the architecture you normally have, okay, of the web. Okay, so because somehow you will be touching some pieces of this. Okay, so sometimes you may be touching the this client server architecture with everything on the server, or sometimes you may be touching on to APIs. Okay, or might be sometimes you may be touching with microservices kind of architectures as well. So okay, any questions on this till now? Okay, so is this clear to you, or can just give me some reactions if it's clear? Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, very good question. See, now when we are building .NET applications, you see .NET application is like I told you, like .NET supports Linux platforms, right? So when you containerization, or if you want to containerize the application, containerization technologies are mostly Linux based containerization. Okay, containerization. So .NET Core definitely support you to what containerize your applications. Okay, so when you are containerizing the application, what you can just think is like you are kind of a packaging. You package your application into an image. Okay, so then that I take that image and I can just run any number of instances. Okay, so can I convert a .NET application into an image and then I can run any number of instances I want, okay, based on a load? Well, that is possible because .NET Core is it is inherently works with the Linux. Okay, and obviously you can containerize your .NET application. And do we learn the containerization in this project in this training program? Well, I see it's not a part of our training program. So our training program will be looking at hosting an API. We will do this architecture. We will have one application. Okay, so which is your web application, and the web application talking to the database, and the web application, okay, might be needing some API request. You can even talk to an API request. Okay, so we'll be doing this architecture. So where the API, the web server will be rendering all the views, but sometimes the web server can call third-party APIs, etc. So we'll do like that architecture. So what you learn is you learn how to use a web application, like the thin client and the fat server architecture. We'll learn this, okay, and also we'll learn how to build what? Okay, RESTful APIs. Okay, and then might be this is 60 days training, right? So we'll learn all these things in this particular training, and then you can take up some projects in case you may be deployed into a project which is going to use Angular, React, or something like that. You can easily understand and do it. Okay, so because in our training we may not be covering React, Angular, but it's a matter of we can easily pick up once you understand what the client side architecture, how this is working. So jQuery, JavaScript. Okay. Yeah. So the short answer is yeah. So .NET Core applications can be containerized, but currently we will be looking at what monolithic kind of architecture. Right. So now if you look at here, see, so how is your like this is structured? So this is the way we are structuring it. So we are dividing it into like 5 modules. So first we will start with like HTML and CSS. So this is the other way we're going to start with. Okay. So let me just put up these things. Okay. First, we will go with so this is our training program. So might be to day one. Today I don't know what we will not cover much, but we'll just give the idea about how things are working around. So day one we are looking at okay, or like first part I think we'll say part one, right? So part one we will just look at HTML, okay, and CSS. So what is HTML, CSS? Obviously they are mostly in the rendering engine part. So this is a rendering engine of in your browser you have rendering engine, right? So this is basically for the rendering engine. And the part two, okay, we are going to be using JavaScript, okay, JavaScript and the jQuery. So this is for the JavaScript engine in the browser, right? So your browser is going to have JavaScript engine, so that will execute your JavaScript. And part three, we are going to be looking into mostly SQL Server, and we'll start with .NET. I think we just have to start .NET, and this is going to be in pure C#. Okay, and we'll also use ASP.NET. Okay, so what is .NET C Sharp? All these are like server side, right? So we just learned about the client side, then we'll go to the server side. This is the server side. And then we have part 4, which is basically server side. We have one more thing, databases, right? So part 4 is going to be database. Oh, so which database we'll use? SQL Server. So this is again what server side. Right. So we have client side, these many things like rendering, engineering, JavaScript engine. These are client side. And this is our server side. And finally, we have full on implementation. So part 5 will have an implementation. Okay. So the project implementation. Okay. So we will see how you structure your code, how to create a like layered architecture, how to run applications, how to write clean code. Basically, we following all the clean code practices. So we'll be following clean code. Okay, so clean code is a pattern which you normally write. Okay, okay, when writing reusable, loosely coupled code. Okay, that's what clean code is about. Okay, writing, no, loosely coupled, uh, reusable code basically. So that's what we're going to learn. So we'll do clean code in JavaScript. We'll learn clean code in .NET. Okay, all these things. We'll be writing mostly clean code. Okay, so this is what we'll be following up. So I think we'll take a short break. Okay, if you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll go with a short break. 10 minutes. Are you good for a 10-minute break? Okay, fine, great. Thanks. We'll take a short minute. Yes, yes. Okay, you want 15 minutes. Okay, fine. We'll take a 15 minutes break. I think 10 minutes is short for a break. Is it? Fine. Okay, fine. We'll just go 15 minutes break and we'll come back in 15 minutes. And special architecture you normally use in web development. So I told you like we have this web part, right? Okay, so the web application part. So I'm talking about this part. Okay, so the website. So when we are building our application, so we will follow an architectural style known as model view controller, or popularly known as MVC. Okay, so we will discuss on these things later. As of now, you just have to understand at high level. So we'll have a project where we will have MVC. Currently, I didn't add API, so later we'll add APIs also. Okay, so we'll have currently one application which is going to be an MVC project, and this project will be connecting to the database. Okay, let me just quickly see where I kept the connection strings. So this is my connection string. So you can see this connecting to our database, and this is my database server. Let me just copy that. And this, okay, so this is from the, we are connecting to the backend. So this will help us to know like what are my tables, okay, what tables I have. So let me just log in from the backend. So what I did right now is actually I connected this application. So you see that this is our database server. So what I'm doing is I'm just connecting and seeing like I told you like we have relationship between tables. Okay, this is RDBMS part. Okay, database server. So I'm just connecting to the RDBMS, and I have a database. Let me just see what is the database I kept here. Okay, so this for the BPCL, this Bharat Petroleum. So I just kept it for their training. So you can see there is a BPCL database. Okay, and here is a new query. So let's understand the backend first. Okay, so you can just easily relate, and understand. So if you see in relational databases, okay, so we have tables and relationships, and you can see I have customer. Okay, so what we have is a simple a prototype banking. So where you have a customer, and a customer has accounts, and then you have transactions for that particular account holder. So you can see these are tables which we will be building up. Okay, so this is a customer's table. So if I put a select star from so you'll be writing SQL queries to retrieve these customers. So let me just put this customers. So you can see we have some table there with a few customer details are there. Okay, and you can see each of the customer has a unique GUID, globally unique identifier. Okay, and some customer names are there. So we'll learn these things later. And we have a table. So each customer has a username and a password. You can see passwords are hashed. Okay, so then we have customers with a set of accounts, right? the customer has a current account, so it just it'll have a relationship. Okay, so each customer so has, you can see there is a, okay, current account with the current account ID, okay, number, account number, and you can see the this is auto generated nine, okay, and some of the accounts are like deleted. Okay, some, okay, so auto generated number, and then you can see the customer whose ID is mapped. Okay, so and you see there is a relationship between this, okay, account and the ID. So the current account belongs to whom, see, the current account belongs to a customer and the customer ID is here. So this is another relationship, the parent child relation, which you will be learning in this training program, how to build this relationship. And each account holder can have any number of what transactions. And the transactions, if you look at this will be huge, because there are more transactions, deposit and withdraw kind of a transaction. So so this table is going to be basically containing the transactions, right? So let me just see what is my can just delete all this values. Okay, so okay, delete from, I think, delete SQL query. Okay, to delete all the 13 rows, I deleted all these records, and I so do I do it for the other also. So let me delete all this. Okay, so it'll delete all the child records. Okay, so because there will be a relationship with the parent. So we always delete the child and then followed by what, parent. So what is the parent of everyone? The customer. So this kind of a relationship which we create is actually known as RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Okay, so we can create relationships. So now if I select the tables, you could see that all are like empty. Okay, so so we have this database, okay, and we have relationship between these tables. You see the tables and tables are related. For example, the customer is having relationship with the account, and account has many transactions, right? So now this is our backend side, and then we have a web server. So I'm just showing this architecture, the thin client, okay, and the fat server architecture. I'll show you later in our training. We'll just add more features into this. So we'll also make APIs. Okay, we'll build APIs. Right now, just understand this much. Okay, so this is good enough to understand what we'll be building. So now if you see, my database server is there. So obviously, when you connect to a database server from a web application, so the web application needs a connection and other details to connect to this application, right? Okay, so that's actually another connection string. So usually you keep the connection string in from outside your source code. It's a good practice because you can change it easily. Okay, and you can see normally you keep it some setting file. Okay, or keep it from outside. You should provide it outside from outside into your application. Remember that. Okay, so you should always don't hard code it. Okay, so you should always keep it from outside into the application so that it is easy for you to change it, right? So right now, okay, I'm having it here. So in cloud environment, so you usually keep it in the cloud environment settings or some kind of a secret or key vault or some kind of services you use. As of now, we will keep it just outside. Okay, just think that you'll keep it outside from our application. You don't have to know much details right now. Just think that there is some settings file where we'll keep the connections and other things which you want to provide from outside into your project. And so now let me just simply run it. Okay, so then you see your project has a www root, which also we're going to discuss in today. Okay, might be if we get time permits, otherwise we'll discuss tomorrow. So when you host your web application, for example, we are going to have a web server. Okay, so in a web server, okay, you have static contents. So you can see that all the static contents like lib, okay, JS, images, CSS. Okay, so remember I told you, like, we will be, when you use, static, we'll be using something like IAS server. So the IAS server is going to host your web pages, right? And so when you use IIS server, so there is a special folder which we will be using tomorrow. I think we'll do that tomorrow. Okay, so we have a special folder known as www root. Okay, so this is a special folder which we will be using. Okay, even in our web application which you're building in .NET Core, and this folder is basically used to store, okay, the static contents. Okay, so what are static contents? Static contents are HTML, CSS, JS, and you can see that. So in my project, so in our project, we'll have images, JS, and all these things. Okay, including the favor icon. Okay, all these are like static contents, right? So in the first part of our training, what we are learning this one only. this one. Okay, first part of our training. So what we learn, so we'll learn how to use HTML, how to make, CSS, JavaScript, okay, etc. So this is actually the static condense what we are learning. So we're trying to learn the static part of your project. Okay, and then we are learning the dynamic part, the models, the view models, and dynamic views and all these things. Okay, and this is the second part, or the next part, once you learn the static condense. So now if you see, okay, and then we have, like in MVC project, you see we have, M stand for models, and you can see then we have views and we have controllers. Okay, so you can just think like these are plain classes, and these classes currently you don't want to go into detail. So this is just understand at abstract level, don't go into concrete implementation details. Okay, just know things only at abstract level. Okay, so now you can see that this is architecture, and many things will repeat. So you keep it in a common library, create libraries. Okay, libraries are a way to reuse your project. You can see we have a library project, okay, where we will keep domain things. You can see what are the domain things in our current project. Domain things are like in the customers, right? You can see that domain classes. You create domain classes. Okay, customers, the account. Okay, and then the account and transactions. Right, so this is your domain specific classes which are related to your domain. And then you have data access. Okay, you have database connections, etc. That is your data access. You have separate layers for creating it, and you have repositories to get the data from each of the data. So we'll learn this like structuring. And also we have services. So what are services, what are repositories, what are domain and data, we'll learn this. Okay, and this is something reusable. Why? Because I want to use this in an API project. So right now, okay, do I have an API project in this? No. Okay. See, now something I want an API project. Okay. And also something I want in what MVC project. So how will I reuse it? Okay. So that's why we create what are separate in libraries. We'll reuse in API project, and we will reuse it in what MVC project. So both the project we can reuse it. So reusability is our primary purpose, especially as developers. Okay. You should always, strive for loosely coupled, and reusable projects. Okay. So we'll learn that, okay, concept here. So let me just quickly run this through, and you get an idea about it. Okay, so now whenever you are launching a project, okay, basically this is a web application. So this is going to launch a web server. So what we discussed, we started off with understanding a web server. So this application is going to be launched, okay, and you can see there is a web server which is started. And so a web server, you can see it's now listening. You see, I told you like listening means what does listening means? Listening means your application is running, and so it's ready to take user input. Okay, so it's ready to take user input. So currently we are hosting in your local machines and testing. Then later I will show you how we can deploy into the cloud, etc. Okay, so we'll learn all that things later. So right now, so if you see that this simple HTML page which is coming here, and you can easily understand this by right click, and you can see there is an option to view page source. Okay, so view page source. So whenever view page source, okay, right? So in a browser, so what does it will give you? It will give you the first thing, okay, the doc type. Okay, we'll come to this in our coming days. Okay, and it says that it is a HTML which is getting generated. Okay, and it is going to be containing different things, like it contains style sheets. Okay, you see it shows that it's containing style sheet, and it contains some meta tags. Okay, so these are things we are learning in the very first modules. So you can see it is pointing to style sheets. Okay, so see it's pointing to bootstrap. Okay, now it it loads some CSS. Okay, additional CSS. Okay, and then you can see then it has okay, some headers. Okay, you can see it has a body tag. Okay, and so then it has some footer, right? So you just can see some footer, and you can see some where it is using jQuery. Okay, and some JS files. So basically you can understand from your application, right? Okay, from application which is you're running, so it's generating plain HTML to you. So it just generate plain HTML to you. So this is static contents which are downloaded, right? Okay, so whenever you are making a HTTP request, okay, what are the things which are downloaded? We will learn how to do this. Okay, so you see in the inspect part of your browser, so we have this network part. So these are things which you should be very good with. Okay, as web developers, we should be very good with finding like what resources are getting downloaded. Okay, what is the status code when I try to download from the web? So is there any getting any 404 error? You can see all are getting 200 errors. Okay, sorry, 200 is not error, 200 is like status code. Okay, so you can just see we're getting all 200. So I need to see if there is any 404 error or not. Okay, some resource is not there, right? So these kind of things as a web developer we need to understand, and you can see that I am getting all the get request. Okay, so all the style sheets are getting downloaded, and you can see that you can filter by CSS, right? So these are the style sheets I got downloaded. These are the JavaScript files I got downloaded. Okay, so we'll just discuss on this. Okay, and here you can see this page itself is downloading all the client side. This is what very important for us. The client side things are getting downloaded. So once the client side things get downloaded, okay, now you can see we have to register because we have deleted all the users, right? Okay, and so you currently this is an anonymous user, so you just can register a particular user. So for example, I'm just using registering a user. Okay, let's say my user is let's say Sachin. Okay, so I'm saying Sachin, and I'll say Sachin at the rate rrd.com. Okay, and I'll just put the password as 1234 as of now. Okay, I didn't put any like strict things, etc. So we can do some client side validation. We'll see how to use jQuery to integrate in this kind of sample application. But this is currently going to the server now. Okay, I'll click on this. Okay, so this is okay, 1234, and you can just see like registration succeeded for this particular user, and currently I need to now log in. Okay, so I'll go into the backend and see if Sachin got inserted, and you can see we will be learning how to see that the backend queries. You see there is some queries which are going into the backend, like some insert statements. Okay, so there are one insert statement to the customer. Okay, and one insert statement to the account. Okay, so one insert statement to the transaction. So we are opening an account, so basically we will have some default balance which we'll be taking. So this is going to be our business use case. So if you see, if I select star, okay, you will be seeing that now we got Sachin inserted. Okay, and Sachin got his password here, okay, which is hashed, and you can see Sachin is user 6F0. So that is this his balance is like by default you are putting a 500 balance, and the transaction type is deposit. So we have now we can log in into the his account, right? So basic transaction features. So we'll go and log into his account. Well, let's say we log in, right? Okay, so I have hard coded some record here. So I'll say Sachin at the rate, okay, rrd.com, and I'll just say 1234. Okay, and I'll simply say login. And now it's not now. Okay, so now you can see currently, if you see, the user has been logged in. Okay, and we can just see Sachin is there, and we have transactions what he passbook. Okay, so in this passbook page you can see he has the initial balance of 500. Okay, might be we'll do one more deposit for him, okay, with an amount of 500 more. Okay, and we'll submit this. Okay, so now we can go his passbook, and you can just see that we have two deposits. Okay, and basic transaction details, and then we can just simply log out. Okay, so now all these interactions which we are doing, you can see it's hitting the database, and we will be tracing that request which are going to the database from the server to the database. So this is actually the traces which are happening, and so every interaction is in the client, and you can see the architectural way which we discussed. Okay, so all the interactions are actually happening from where? Okay, from the client side. Okay, so we are doing anything, it goes to the server side. Okay, and so the server will interact to the database, right? So we have a full, like thin and a fat server kind of an architecture which is built on MVC. Okay, and so we will integrate more things like jQuery validations and other things as then we go further. Okay, we'll build this from scratch. Okay, right now I just made it for this other client which I had. So, but according to our requirement, we'll just change it. Okay, we'll just keep adding what. Okay, so we'll add a API layer. Okay, so the API layer can be integrated into our project, and then we can just make this application much better. And obviously, you have a project. Okay, in case you want to do a separate project based on this also, you can feel free to do that. So this is going to be our the last part where we'll be building a full stack kind of project which we will be implementing. Okay, and also we have SQL, so you should know how to write SQL queries, how to how to like how to performance tuning. So basically, how to tune your SQL queries, how do indexes work. Okay, some of the tuning part also you should know as a developer. Mostly, we should be knowing that also, like how to write better queries. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. No problem, Markonda. So. Yeah, so as part of your just 1 minute, okay. So if you before you're dropping off, okay, as part of your like as part of the clinic, so we have like So we just have a small formality. Just give me just 1 minute, Markanda. Thanks for connecting. Just give me 1 minute. So we have this. Okay, where is our course here? So this is our .NET custom course. So it's always like, well, begun is half done, right? So since we started off, so we have an entering feedback. So if you, okay, before you dropping off, you can just give your entering feedback, and then if you want to drop, we can drop. Okay, I hope I copied the right one. Yes, so I think this is our custom page. Fine, cool. So just I can put in your entering feedback. The final one we'll do it after our 6